As Europe has become the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic, NATO has been coordinating air transport of medical equipment and personnel. Euractiv spoke to NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg about NATO's crisis response and threat preparedness, China's role, and the pandemic's impact on the military alliance. Mr. Secretary-General, you called COVID-19 a common invisible enemy. What efforts are made to coordinate a joint response between the EU and NATO to tackle the crisis?
So we are working closely with the European Union, and NATO and the European Union are complementing each other, and we will have a defense ministerial meeting in NATO on also using secure video conference, and then Josep Borrell, the High Representative, Vice President, will participate there. I'm also staying in close contact with President Ursula von der Leyen and President Charles Michel, and we also coordinate on staff level. So NATO and the EU are coordinating closely in combating the COVID-19 or the coronavirus.
What long-term lessons could NATO learn from the pandemic, especially when we think about preparedness for bacteriological warfare, CBRN threats?
NATO is an organization which has always prepared for crisis and which has developed capabilities that can be deployed in response to an armed attack to military threats. What we see now is that these capabilities are also very useful in supporting the civilian efforts in fighting a health crisis, the corona crisis. Because we have seen how NATO can use our command structure, we use different NATO mechanisms to make sure that we can lift a lot of equipment from around the globe into Europe to transport, for instance, protective suits or medical equipment to help allies cope with the corona crisis. We have field hospitals which are transported and been set up in help of or helping allies dealing with the crisis. Medical evacuation, which is something we have developed over years and which something we use, for instance, in Afghanistan, transporting heavily wounded or seriously wounded soldiers. We now use the same tools, the same skills to transport infected people in Europe to hospitals where they can get treatment. So military personnel on the national level, NATO command structure, NATO capabilities, strategic airlift are being now used to a large extent, providing significant support to NATO allies in fighting COVID-19.
In December, NATO decided to put a stronger focus on China. In recent weeks, we have seen something dubbed mass diplomacy by the Chinese in Europe, but also some efforts by the Russians. Is this a reason of concern to NATO?
We have to take seriously any attempt to utilize a health crisis to convey false narratives and disinformation propaganda. I believe that the best response to propaganda is not propaganda. I believe that the best response to propaganda is the truth, are facts. And therefore, that's exactly what we do. We are transparent and we provide facts about what we do as NATO allies. But fundamentally, I believe that the best response we have to disinformation is a free and independent press. Journalists asking the difficult questions, journalists checking their sources. That's the best way to make sure that those who are trying to convey disinformation campaigns doesn't succeed, and NATO's core task is to protect those democratic values that enable a free press to operate.
During the last NATO ministerial, you mentioned other threats that could go unnoticed while the world is focused on the pandemic. What are you most worried about?
What we see now is that we all are focused on, and of course NATO too, on the imminent challenges the corona crisis poses on us, and NATO help allies in responding. At the same time, we know that the threats and the challenges that were there before the COVID-19 crisis, they have not disappeared. They are still there. The terrorist threat, the instability in the Middle East, Syria, North Africa, cyber threats, but also the challenges posed by a shifting balance, a global balance of power with the rise of China, or a more assertive Russia, which is responsible for continuing violating the sovereignty of Ukraine and Georgia to European nations. So the reality is that yes, of course, we have to deal with the COVID-19, but at the same time, we have to make sure that the health crisis doesn't become a security crisis. So therefore, NATO help dealing with the COVID-19 crisis, but at the same time, we need to maintain our missions and operations, our readiness, and that's the reason why we sustain our battle groups in the eastern part of the alliance, in the Baltic countries, why we continue to do air policing, and why we continue to fight international terrorism with our mission in Afghanistan, or help to stabilize the Western Balkans with our mission in Kosovo. And we need to do both at the same time, fight COVID-19, but also address the other threats and challenges which we are faced with.
Europe might face a severe recession after the pandemic. Will NATO be willing to reconsider the national contributions to the 2% target?
I think we all now are focused on how to save lives, and that's the main task. Then we all understand that there will be some severe economic consequences of the COVID-19 crisis, and how severe those will be depends also on how long this will last. I think what we have seen is partly that the threats which we are faced with haven't disappeared because of the COVID-19 crisis. And partly we've also seen that military capabilities like airlift, like military medicine, like logistics, transportation, field hospitals, all that, they are relevant in dealing with the health crisis. So investing in military is not only relevant for responding to a military threat, but investing in military provides the civil society with a surge capability that can be utilized in crises like this, and that's exactly what NATO allies do. They do because we see military personnel helping the health workers on the front line all the time. So what we also need to do is to understand the importance of resilience. That everything we can do to make our societies more resilient will help us be prepared for the next crisis. And resilience is a core task for NATO. It's actually something which is enshrined in NATO's founding treaty, saying that we have a responsibility for making allies resilient also against, for instance, health threats.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Stay safe.